Hi there, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be doing a strategic overview of section 14 of the FE Electrical and Computer Exam specification, which is computer networks. So without further ado, let's dive into the content. The section 14, computer networking, computer networks, it is a challenging topic. I agree. And for multiple reasons, as I mentioned previously as well, the 3-4 major reasons. Number one, a lot of students who are taking FE Electrical and Computer exam don't have computer networking background. Most of you guys and girls are power systems engineers. So you're working in power industry, you don't get to deal with LAN, MAN, WAN, TCP, IP, UDP, IPv6, IPv4. And chances are that you never took a course in computer networks in your undergraduate studies. So when you are presented with computer networking, it is possibly the first time that you're interacting with these concepts outside of our day-to-day layman understanding of what a computer network is. We all have heard LAN, internet, Ethernet, Wi-Fi, wireless before. We live in the world of information technology, right? In the days of data revolution, basically information revolution. From the standpoint of the FE Electrical and Computer exam, this topic is going to be appearing at the very end. Second half of the exam, those of you who have taken the exam before, or those of you who have been preparing for the exam, or those of you who keep an eye on different forums, or if you've spoken with your friends and colleagues, everybody says that the second half of the exam, which really starts somewhere after electronics and goes up until software, is challenging. It's not challenging, in my opinion, just because they want to make your life difficult. It's just that the distribution of topics before electronics, including electronics, and after electronics is very different in nature. And we've spoken about this before. I'm going to keep it brief. We start out with the first 5 topics: math, probability, stats, ethics, engineering economics, properties of electrical materials, and maybe throw circuit analysis as part of it as well. These are a little bit easier, broader topics, okay? And then in the second, and that's what makes up the major chunk of the first half of the exam. When you start the second half of the exam from electronics onwards, you start getting, power systems, digital systems, electromagnetics, control systems. You have signal processing, communications. You have all the computer sections showing up in the second half. So it's just the nature of the beast. The topics that we're discussing, that we are being tested on in second half, are more convoluted, more abstract, and more specialized. Now, on top of that, this section 14, computer networking, appears literally at the tail end of your exam, in the last 45 minutes to 1 hour, depending on how you have budgeted your time. If you put yourself in the shoes of a candidate who is taking this exam and is starting to see computer network related. And the other interesting thing is that these topics sort of all blend in together, because digital systems portion of it looks like computer networks, right? Then you have computer systems, which has a little bit of overlap with digital systems. So when you see questions from digital systems, then computer networking and computer systems, it may give you an impression that you are being unfairly tested with more questions than you expected from these smaller topics on the exam. But the fact of the matter is that since it sort of blends in seamlessly, it gives that illusion. The heavy hitter still is digital systems, okay, followed by computer systems, and the smallest amongst the 3 is computer networks. Does it make sense? So we need to have an understanding of what we are dealing with. And my recommendation, before I dive into each and every one of these subtopics, is that please cover the entire ground. Okay? There is that temptation on the part of a lot of students to skip stuff. And I've actually done YouTube interviews, success stories for FE Electrical, and you can find some of the interviews where students have said that, Wasim, I did not take your advice and I decided to actually skip computer sections or barely understand what was in the reference handbook because I was short on time. I had previously scheduled the exam already, and for multiple reasons, I had to take it, right? It was a do or die situation. Okay. Otherwise, they would have lost, that slot or whatnot and might have had to travel. Sometimes it's a contractual requirement from the employers. But that is only one part of the story. You got to listen to the full story. In 99% of the cases, these folks who are making this risky choice actually double down on all the remaining 15, 16 sections. They make sure that if they are shaky or skipping or intentionally going into the exam with a very clear minded approach of guessing on every question related to computer networks, they make sure that the remaining 15, 16 sections on the exam are strongly above average, which in my opinion is actually a little bit more difficult thing to do. My recommendation is that at the very least, go, if you're in the program, if you're using my resources, go through all the content, go through all the quizzes and work through in order to develop a fundamental understanding. Okay, so this is the overarching strategy for computer networks. Now, when we start looking at individual topics such as network types, I think this should be a slam dunk. You should understand PAN, LAN, MAN, WAN. They're all distinguished and separated, identified. Okay, the unique feature is just a distance. Amongst other things, there are several different protocols that are used for each one of them, but primarily you can make the distinction based on the size of the network. Network topology is very intuitive. Bus, when you think of a bus, it's a straight line. Star, think of a star. Tree, ring, mesh, and we go in a lot of detail. Please make sure that you understand this. There's a formula associated with a full network over here. Ring, the advantages, disadvantages, what happens when the ring breaks, converts into a bus, and so on and so forth. There's a physical limitation. Similarly, tree and the hybrid model and the star and bus, how many points of failures and so on. Network models, we spent a lot of time in the course. OSI versus TCP/IP. OSI, remember guys, that it is a theoretical model. In practice, our internet is using TCP/IP. So individual layers, functionality, TCP/IP has fewer layers than OSI. A couple of layers in OSI are merged into single layers of TCP/IP. So make sure that you understand which are the different protocols that are used in the course. I have that, the diagram that I showed you compares different layers, and then you have specific protocols that reside in different layers. Network devices, this is the topic. Despite, again, having 16 plus pages in the reference handbook, the reference handbook is kind of silent on these topics. It doesn't really talk about hub, switches, bridge, router, gateways. Switches and routers are explicitly mentioned in the exam specification. The exam specification, as you guys know, is sort of a higher level outline of what you can expect in the given topic, in the given section. And then the reference handbook under the heading of computer networks has a lot more details, right? So interestingly, in the exam specification, they mentioned routers and switches, but in the reference handbook material, when you start looking through computer networks, it is kind of silent about it. But in the on-demand, we've gone through it. We have quizzes and practice problems, so please work through that. Internet protocols, this IPv4 and IPv6 business takes a little bit of time to wrap your head around it. The header format is more applicable, more interesting for IPv4, whereas the addressing, expansion, and compression and abbreviation is more specific and more interesting for IPv6, because IPv6 header is very simple. There are only few moving pieces. And if you've understood the IPv4 header, in fact, there are items in there that actually overlap, right? So we don't have to really worry about it as much as long as you understand the IPv4. ICMP is a supporting protocol. And then you have the UDP, TCP, the transport layer protocol is very important. UDP is used for high speed applications where accuracy is not a big concern, and TCP. And we go in a lot of detail. We look at the header format. We look at the 3-way handshake, the 4-way handshake, and so on. Okay. Communication methodologies, very simple, straightforward, simplex, half duplex, and full duplex. Then we have security section of computer networking, which is humongous. Okay. And within the coursework, I have gone in quite a bit of detail, and the feedback I've received from students is that this is where, when they're pushing themselves through computer networks, right? This is the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. Okay. Now, when they've reached this far and they still find that, oh, there's so much more content related to yet another dry topic, which is network security, about which I have no clue outside of understanding maybe the firewall settings, knowing that the laptop that I'm given from work blocks so many applications. And the thing that really enables them to do that is the firewall. I mean, that is the extent of understanding of firewalls for most of us who don't have computer networking background, right? Then we have CIA, confidentiality, integrity, and accessibility. We talk about the basics. And when we start getting into network intrusion detection and prevention systems and the scanning mechanism, Nmap, and so on, network authentication, something you have, something you know, something you are. Again, these concepts are mentioned in the reference handbook in sort of a scattered, disjointed manner, and the on-demand coursework makes an effort to put additional meat and bone. Okay. So at the very least, at 1.5x speed, I strongly recommend that you guys go through it rapidly. Does it make sense? So that when you're looking at the reference handbook material, at least you can make a connection that, okay, this is what Wasim was explaining, right? These are some of the quizzes that I've done. These are some of the practice problems that I've done on this topic. Strongly recommend you to at least go through it once. And then the final piece, which I would like to call as low-hanging fruit, despite the fact that there's some interesting math and concept and theory behind it, is your cryptography. Diffie-Hellman key exchange protocol, very interesting. I use that paint analogy to explain you guys, did multiple in-lecture practice problems. Please review those. RSA algorithm, my personal favorite algorithm, okay? In fact, I had to learn this concept for the first time myself when I was preparing for the FE electrical and computer exam. Extremely interesting, okay? Very, very fascinating concept and very elegant. So RSA algorithm, I've gone through it step by step, explained to you guys, and we've dealt with the formulas that are given in the reference handbook. I've broken them down, giving you different approaches, how to deal with them. And then last but not the least is the Maccabi cyclomatic complexity, which is arguably the easiest of the three over here. So when we take a step back, I do agree. Computer networks, a lot of work. Computer networks, not enough reward. But remember that the 3 to 4 or maybe 5 to 6 questions that you will see on computer networks, if on one extreme you score a 0, that can cause a dent in your chances of passing the exam. If on the other extreme you score a perfect, that can significantly boost your chances on passing as far as passing the exam is concerned. To make, to reach the middle ground, unfortunately, you'll still have to put, if you're using the on-demand course or lectures and you're doing the study guide problems, I would say you'd have to set aside anywhere between 12 to 16 hours of study time just for this topic. Okay, for some of you, it could be on the lower end, as low as 10 hours. For some of you, it can potentially push 18 hours, right? That is an unfortunate fact. Okay, but those of you who do have some background, you'll be able to leverage it. And even if you don't have, like 4 to 6 questions on the exam is quite a bit, especially between passing and failing. We're not looking at percentiles. We're not trying to ace this exam, right? So 4 to 6 questions will probably bump up your overall average by about 5% maximum. But 5%, you guys know, on the exam is a huge deal. Again, my strong recommendation, guys, if your exam is coming up in the next couple of weeks, in the next few days, and you're just getting started with computer networks, I will give you a rare exception to skip the on-demand content and jump directly to my live training crash course summary on computer networks, which is still not like a crash course summary. It's still a 3-hour long session. But if you do it at 1.25x, you'll probably be done with it in about 2 hours and 2 hours and 15 minutes, maybe, right? And it will give you a very nice overview of some of the easy topics, and you'll be able to bite your teeth into some of the algorithms and whatnot. You'll still be better off. You'll probably hit close to average, maybe even slightly above average. But I don't want you to resort to this right away. It is the final option, okay? Only when you don't have enough time. If you're new to this channel, please consider subscribing. On a weekly basis, I'm creating content for FE Electrical and PE Power exam preparation. I also discuss topics related to electrical engineering with a focus on power systems engineering. If you'd like to learn more about my FE Electrical and PE Power exam preparation programs, please visit my website, studyforfe.com.